Here we are in Photoshop, and we are today going to create this little effect right here of the writing on the conversation heart for Valentine's Day. It's kind of a cool little effect. So we are going to get started here kind of duplicating what I've done before over here on this other heart. So here in Photoshop, first let's kind of straighten up our workspace a little bit. I don't really need my library, so I'm going to double click on the tab here to minimize it. Okay, so we can see I've got my left pink heart with a bunch of smart filters applied to it. It's also a smart object, and we're going to learn a little bit about smart objects here while we create this. Alright, so the first thing we need to do is to create a object to kind of base our smart object on. So come over here to the toolbar, click on the little rectangle tool down here. If you don't see rectangle tool, just right click on there and choose rectangle tool. And I'm going to draw a rectangle about here, just about the size of the surface of our heart, and it's going to be black or some color, whatever your foreground color is. So inside of the properties, let's click on that and then change it. We'll just change it to white, and then click on our properties to get rid of them. Okay, that looks fine. Now grab our move tool just to kind of make it so it's not active anymore. And now we just created a rectangle. Let's just rename it right pink heart. And then we need to make this into our smart object. So right click on that and then choose create smart, convert to smart object. Sorry about that. Convert to smart object. Okay. Now that makes it into a smart object. See how the icon changed? So if I undo that, here's our little shape icon, and I redo it, and now it's a smart object. That's the smart object indicator icon. So double click on that little icon. That takes us into editing our smart object, right pink heart 1.psb. Okay, so now we need to add our text. So grab our text tool and just click here right and kind of in the middle to put our text in. Now our text settings, I chose Arial, bold, about 65 points. Crisp is fine, center align it, and then for my color, just click here and just use that kind of magenta red number 5 or whatever food coloring that is they use. I'd say right about there. And if you want to get a look at those settings there and be exact, you can just grab that and type it in. Click OK. Now we'll type our message. Let's type in love you, and then check into cache. Okay, so now if we just close that, it's going to ask us to save it, and we'll say yep, save it. Okay, now that looks pretty great, but we need to do a couple more things here. So the first thing is to get rid of that white rectangle that we drew earlier. So let's hop back into our smart object, click, and just turn off that layer. And there we go. Now if we save it, close it and save it, that's starting to look a little more, I don't know if it's more realistic, but there it is. So double click back in there. Okay, so now to kind of create that rougher edge look, let's go back into our smart object, and then we're going to add a stroke. So click on the word stroke, and that'll bring up our stroke settings. And I did about a size of 2. It just kind of depends. You can kind of play with that a little bit, maybe 3 or so. Position, change it to the outside. But the blend mode, I set it to multiply, but we can just keep it on normal. And then the color, we'll just click on that, and then just sample the same color of your text letters, and then hit OK. That looks fine there. So we'll hit OK. Now we'll just save it this time. Just hit go to File, Save, and then we can just jump back without having to close it. And we can see, yep, that's looking a little bit better. At least the letters are heavier. Let's go back to our USB. And now to kind of roughen them up a little bit, kind of go into 100%. You can kind of see these have a kind of like a roughness around the outside. And this one just looks like it's a little too perfect. So let's just Control 1 again. Okay, so let's do that a little bit. Double click kind of in a blank area of our text layer. Just click twice, and we're going to add what's called an outer glow. I'm just going to move this out of the way. So outer glow, and see how that it's set to the blend mode dissolve. Here's normal. If we set it to dissolve, it just kind of chunkens it up a little bit. It doesn't look super good at the moment, but we'll do some more things to kind of make this look better. So the opacity, bring that up. 100% is fine. Noise, leave that alone just because the dissolve is adding enough noise. And then our technique, I switched to precise just because it seems to add a little bit more of that rough noise. And the size, and spread at 13 and size at around 7. And you can kind of pull those just a little bit to see what they do, but 13 and 7 looks pretty good. Leave these guys alone down here, and now choose OK. And I'm liking how that's starting to look, so File, Save, hop back over so you kind of see what that did. Alright, looking pretty good. Okay, so let's work on adding these smart filters here. So smart filters are just filters that are applied to smart objects. This is a smart object, so to add our filters, we just go up to the filter menu, and just looking at our list here, the first one we're going to do is add a little bit of noise. And since this is here, let's kind of check. We can just double click on Add Noise, and we can see what our settings were. So about an amount of about 7%, Gaussian, monochromatic. So that's what we're going to add to ours. So right pane cart, come up to filter, and that was under add noise. So that's under noise, add noise, noise, and then it's already got our settings all set for us. So you'll have to type these in though. 7.16, click on Gaussian, and then monochromatic, and now hit OK. It's just going to roughen it up a little bit more with some noise. Noise. Now to median. So up here to filter, and median is inside of noise as well. So noise, median. And I chose a median of about 3, and now that really just kind of gives us that nice rough edge. So now we'll hit OK. And it's starting to look a little bit more like our example over there. And now finally we've got our blur gallery. Now we need to do a couple things before we do that. So obviously we need to rotate this thing so it kind of looks like it's on the surface here. So we just hit a Control T. It's going to give us this little message about smart filters will become temporarily turned off. Yeah, that's fine. Just hit OK. Okay, so now we just kind of hover over the outside of a corner and rotate it counterclockwise. Okay, right about there. And now you go, right? But just because of the way that this is tilted, we need to kind of tweak the perspective a little bit. So to do that, while we're still here in our free transform, we still see our little control handles here. Hold down the control key on the keyboard. Now see how that changes our cursor to a white arrow. So with control held down, click and drag our corners here a little bit. You kind of have to kind of eyeball this, but we're trying to match that perspective of the heart candy there. And I think that looks pretty good right about there. Maybe just a little. So you're just trying to make it look like it's on that candy. Check into cache. And there we go, looking pretty, that looks pretty good. You know, at this point, I can see that we've got kind of a blur on our candy because of the way that the lens depth, it's called depth perspective. But our text is so small, it looks pretty good because it just fits right in that part that's in focus. If we had a larger message, we would add this last one, which is a special type of blur. So let's make our text just a little bit bigger. So if I hit Control T again, it's going to say yeah. And now I'm just going to hold down Alt and Shift and grab from a corner, and we'll scale up our little message there. So Alt drags it out from the center, and Shift just keeps it in perspective. Not perspective, but keeps it proportionate. That's the word I was looking for. Okay, now just check into cache there. And now let's put in our blur, because we can see that part of this is kind of getting blurred inside of the picture. So let's go up to our filter, and then we can choose blur gallery. That's where this blur is. It's called a tilt shift blur. So click on that. Okay, we kind of get a weird interface here with our blur tools panel and some other things that are down here, and this strange little user interface heads up display. So we just need to control minus a couple times, kind of see what we're looking at. What this filter does is it keeps this area that's inside of the middle in focus, and then there's a kind of like this little dividing line, and then to this dotted line out here on the outer edges where the blur comes into effect. Now we want to move this center part by clicking and dragging it onto our candy over here. And then I'm going to just let's go back into 100%, hold down space to pan over, and now I'm just going to grab, it's kind of tricky to grab that, it wants to rotate at first, so let it do what it wants. We need to rotate this kind of to the right, clockwise, 20% or so. It's just kind of, you're going to have to kind of eyeball it. Now I'm going to grab and just, again, it's kind of tricky. We want to make sure that we have that little left and right arrow. Click on that and kind of pull this one up just to the start of the blur. And now this one here, we're going to move it around and just kind of pull that right about to there. And now that dotted line comes into play next, so we're going to pull the dotted line in a little closer. Right about to there. Maybe pull this guy in just a little bit more. Pull this one down a little. To there. Pull this dotted line down a little. And there we go. Oh man, see how it affected the V there? Oh, that looks cool. Okay, put this guy up there. Okay, and you might need to kind of play with this a little bit. Maybe rotating this just up a little bit. But the nice thing about working in smart filters is all of this stuff you can go back and edit it at any time. If we needed to cut down our median a little bit, or increase or decrease our noise, working in smart objects is just the way to go. So that's pretty much it. That's it. I think this looks even better than that one. I like that color better. But yeah, thanks for watching.